What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer, Gabe, and Chris, joined by the one and only Kel Kade, author of King's Dark Tidings. We'll introduce her properly in just a moment, but first, if you're here, you probably know what we're doing today. We've been talking about it for weeks. We're talking a whole lot of King's Dark Tidings and chatting about Kel Kade's author journey. We'll go spoiler free for the first little bit, and then we'll dive deep into a full series spoiler discussion, including Mage of No Renown and Dragons and Demons. But we will give you plenty of warning first. And if you're watching on YouTube, there's also the chapters down below. I'll have it all labeled. By the way, this is not our book 5 deep dive episode. We'll be doing that another day soon, so stay tuned for that. And speaking of staying tuned, it helps the channel a ton if you smash those like and subscribe buttons and ring that little bell icon to get notified when we put up new content. And remember that every time you hit those buttons is another day that Tyrion Nereus does not spill his wine all over Gabe's new shirt. So do the right thing. And by the way, Tyrion has done that so many times. Like, he's spilled wine on Frisha at least twice. In my headcanon, he's done it so many times. He's just spilling wine all over the place. Quick plug, only thing that I'll say about it, because I know it gets talked to death in our other videos, but we just started our second channel called The Fantasy Files Reacts. So go check that out if you want to hear us talk about movies, TV shows, video games, things that aren't necessarily fantasy or book related. I'll link it all below. Go check it out. Well, with all that out of the way, let's introduce our guest and answer the age-old question of what have we been reading lately. So Kel, if somebody, I'm sure that everybody who's here knows exactly what they're in for. Everybody's here to hear us talk with you and talk about King's Dark Tidings. But just in case that there is some hermit who has been living out in the middle of nowhere, literally under a rock in a cave somewhere, and they've just come back to civilization and they're like, oh, what's this? Do you want to tell us like who you are, what you write, and where people can follow you?
Sure. I'm Kel Kade, and I write epic fantasy. I've written the King's Dark Tidings series. There's 5 books in that series at the moment, plus a prequel. And also write the Shroud of Prophecy series. There's 2 books in that series at the moment, working on the 3rd. So nice. And you can follow me on Twitter and at Kel _Kade, and on Facebook at Read Kel Kade, and Instagram.
Sweet.
And you have a website too, right?
I do have a website.
kelkade.com.
kelkade.com. Yes.
Nice. Awesome. Have you been reading anything lately, or is there anything that you would like to recommend?
Well, I'm actually reading an oldie. I'm reading David Eddings' Belgariad series. I'm on the 5th book, still working my way through that. I had to take a little break to get some writing done, but
yeah,
working on that.
Yeah, I gotta imagine it's hard to get that reading in when it's like crunch time to get a book out.
Yeah.
Well, I find I used to feel really guilty about reading because I would always feel like if I'm reading, I should be writing my own books. But I found that I actually write better when I've been reading. It helps get those creative pieces kind of flowing. Yep. And so if I'm reading something in some downtime, then I get a little more efficient with my writing. So I don't feel so guilty now.
For sure.
Yeah. I feel kind of the same way about like editing podcasts and stuff. Like, I always feel really guilty because I spend so much time on YouTube. I spend too much time on YouTube, and I feel really guilty about watching like other booktubers and stuff while I'm sitting in front of my computer. I'm like, I should be editing the next like review or the next podcast or whatever. But those things do like energize me and give me new ideas for like that kind of editing and stuff. So
yeah, it's research.
Yeah, exactly. Research. Gabe, have you been reading anything cool lately?
Yeah, so it's cool to me. So the He Who Slays Monsters series is an 8-book series, but I didn't realize that the 8th book is slated to come out October 8th or something like that. So I read up into to 7, and I loved it. It's kind of a lit RPG, like very loose lit RPG, I would say. Super great story, lots of great plots, and then so I'm waiting for that. And then of course I went back and read the last 2 Demons and Dragons in the book before that
Nice.
of KDT. And yeah, so that's it for me pretty much.
What do you read next?
I honestly don't know, dude. I mean, I'm gonna wait until book 8 comes out for He Who Slays Monsters, but that's like a week away. So I have no idea what I'm gonna read next.
You should start Mistborn Era 2.
Yeah, yeah.
You should do it.
It's on my list.
You would
definitely
love
on my
it.
list. I totally will.
The next book comes out in I think it's early November. I think is the next Mistborn book.
And there's 2 out right now of Era 2.
There's 3 out
3
in
out.
Era 2.
Okay.
And I guess Era 2 is going to be a 4-book series.
Oh, okay.
So the one that comes out in November wraps up Era 2.
Gotcha.
And then it's on to Era 3, which is supposed to be, from what I understand, like a sci-fi Mistborn.
Futuristic.
Interesting.
type
Yeah,
thing.
So that
That
would
would
be
be
nuts.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but it'll be cool.
Yep.
Chris, you so what have you been reading lately? I'm sorry. The joke is that he's like the slowest reader, and so we know what he's been reading.
The latest KDT. And it's not so much that I'm a slow reader. I'm just, I got a lot of other things going on. Busy, right?
No, for sure. Yeah. No, that's totally fair. We're madmen over here. So
I know you guys are nuts.
We read too much.
I just have a job that like literally coincides with listening to audiobooks because I can listen 10 hours a day every day.
Same.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I can go through so fast through these books.
See, I'm trying to listen at night before I'm going to bed.
Yeah, when you got like 40 minutes to like
15 minutes later, I fall asleep and I'm like, oh wait, yeah.
You're like, oh crap, yeah.
I also listen to audiobooks at the normal speed setting. I can't speed it up like you guys do. That's just insane to me.
I'm at 2 times now, dude.
Wait. Just hear me out, Chris. Try 1.25. It's not nearly like too fast at all. It feels like normal speed, but it just like cuts down the time a little bit. And that's where I started. And now I'm at 1.7, I think is where I'm at a comfortable level. But just try 1.25 because it's really not that different than doing normal speed.
I'll think about it.
I've been at like two times for the last several books, and I just for fun I tried to take it back down to 1 time speed.
Yeah.
And my brain like couldn't understand how people could listen to it like that. Like it is so slow, dude. It's like it was like slow motion. It was really weird. But.
All right.
Yeah,
well, for the rest
fair.
of us that process words at a normal rate,
you're like, yeah, for us normies over here.
No, it's honestly really weird how the brain just kind of like catches
it adapts to it. Yeah, exactly. That's all it is.
Like this last week, I typically listen at like 1.5, but this last week I was like, I have to listen to all the King's Dark Tidings book this week. I'm like, so I'm going to set it at like, I think for a while I was like at 1.9 and I was like, that's a little too fast. And so I moved it down to like 1.8 and then I listened at 1.8 for a while and then I turned it back to 1.25 and I was like, oh yeah, this is like too slow.
Yeah.
But like really at that 1.8 speed, your brain really does, like it was weird for a while, but it really does like adapt and it just sounds normal after a couple hours. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Take your guys' word for it. So anyway, obviously I've been listening to Dragons and Demons at the normal speed. Wrap that up. And then prior to that, I was reading, I think I told you guys, I was reading Gene Wolfe, the Book of the New Sun, which is a tetralogy. And that was really hard to get through. I only got through the first book. He uses a lot of just made up terminology, which is hard. So you get used to it after a while, but a lot of just words that I'm like, what does that? And actually, sorry. So Gene Wolfe, I just said he makes them up. He doesn't make them up. They're all real words. It's not like Dune where there's some made
Right.
up words, but they're all real words, but they're very archaic or obscure. So everything's got a definition, luckily, but
Yeah.
some of them, are words that haven't been in use for, hundreds of years or something, or, it's like, so that makes it a slow read for me, at least. And then, like you guys said, I'm a slow reader, so double that time. And
For sure.
So
Do you think you'll continue the series or no?
I would like to
Oh, okay.
at some point, when I have the time. Yeah. But I think next I want to tackle the Expanse and
Yes.
get through that.
That's
'cause,
where I want to go back there too.
Yes, dude.
gone through books 1 through 4, I think, but
We should all go back to the Expanse. And speaking of which, that's what I was reading before King's Dark Tidings is book 7. And I listened to book 6 and I just really did not like it. I mean, it was fine. Like it wasn't like bad. It wasn't like a DNF or anything, but it was just, it wasn't why I read the Expanse. You know what I mean? And so book 7, my legs caught in my chair here. Sorry. Book 7 is as soon as I started it, I knew I was like, oh, this is like what I read the Expanse for, like the big, like,
airship battles and
big
space
airship
and all that
battles,
stuff.
like all this like super far, like alien technology and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that's exactly what I love about it.
say
So
airship battles.
I did. I
Well,
don't know why I said that. I have no
spaceship
idea.
battles.
Spaceship battles. It's spaceship for sure.
There's a
Space is
distinction.
notorious for having air in it, though. So, yeah.
I'm picturing
No,
blimps.
yeah. Like blimps out in space. Or
Yeah,
something.
Right.
that'd be great. So no, I read book 7. I was like, oh yeah, I cannot wait to go on to book 8. And Audible, I don't know if you guys participated in this, but Audible was having this huge sale where like almost every single book was like 75% off.
So when they have a sale, because I buy credits. So is it like a credit or is it like half a credit or a third of a credit?
It's just dollars. Like, so like if you would normally spend like $11 on a credit, go look at their sale and there'll be books for like $4. That's cheaper than a credit.
That is okay.
And so like when they have those big sales, I just go on the website because you can't do it through the app now. You have to go on the website. And dude, I got the next I think the next 2 Expanse books for $4 each. And a bunch of other books that I've been wanting to read for like $4. So
Sweet.
Cool.
So yeah, super excited to go on to that. But that's enough about what we've been reading. Let's go into our spoiler-free section of this podcast where we get to talk to Kel Kade about King's Dark Tidings and everything else. So Kel, first of all, thank you so much for being here. First of all, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you for having me.
For sure. But also thank you so much for these amazing books. It has been a very long time since I've read something and from page 1 have been like, oh, I'm gonna love these. Usually it takes like, halfway through the first book to really get into it and stuff for me. As soon as I started Free the Darkness, which I think was maybe 2.5 years ago now, and right from the opening scene, I was like, oh yeah, I'm absolutely gonna love these. And sure enough, they are one of my favorite, like top 2 favorite series. It's Dresden Files and it's King's Dark Tidings.
Yeah.
And I am just such a huge fan of these books. And I'll wrap all the fanboy stuff up here in a minute, but I just want to say that Reign of Madness is my book where if I was stuck on like a desert island, I would take Reign of Madness because I have read that second book over and over and over so many times. I love like literally that whole book could have just been the nobles on the ship talking, and that would have been all I needed. Like I just love all the conversations that happen in that book and just all the just that whole time they were on the ship, all the intrigue and of course everything else too. But yeah, that book is like my absolute favorite. So thank you for writing these. Just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you for reading them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so we obviously have to start with how you became an author, and just where the idea for Rezkin and King's Dark Tidings in general kind of came from. How did this whole journey kind of start? And I'm also interested, if you want to talk about it, I'm also interested in the move from self-pub to traditionally published with the other series. So if you'd like to talk about any of that a little bit, that'd be great.
Oh, that's a lot to talk about.
I know. I'm sorry. Feel free to pick and choose.
Well, I like to say I kind of became an author by accident. It wasn't my intention to be a writer, to publish anything. I was actually working on my doctorate in geosciences.
Wow.
Oh.
And got to a point where I ran out of funding, and I had to take some time off, and I didn't have a job, and I didn't have my schooling going on, and I was just kind of in a dark place, and searching for some kind of income. And between filling out job applications, I was doing a lot of reading, and I didn't have any money, so I had my $10 a month Kindle Unlimited membership.
Yep.
And so I was reading a lot, just trying to keep my head on straight, and just doing a lot of reading. And I read a lot of really great books that were inspiring, and then I read a lot of really bad books that I was
that
just
weren't.
Yep.
I was like,
That's how
I
it
can't.
goes.
One day I'm just like, I can't believe people are actually making money off this. And I was like, I could do this. I think I can do this. And so I just sort of sat down and started writing a story that I had in my head. And this kind of answers one of your other questions, but I was writing this story. And as I'm writing this story, this other character starts interrupting me. And some of the scenes that this other character was involved in, to me, were hilarious. But he was really, really persistent, wanted the attention. And so that other character turned out to be Rezkin.
Cool.
Oh.
And so I started writing down some of these scenes, mostly the funny ones at first, before I would forget them. And before I knew it, I was writing an entirely different book. And so I switched over, and I started writing that story, and put the other one on the back burner for a while. And the two stories were related. I've mentioned in previous interviews and things that the other story I was writing is set about 1,200 years in the past, from where King's Dark Tidings is. So eventually I'll revisit that, and you'll get some more in the world of KDT.
Ooh.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
But yeah, so I ended up writing a whole lot. And by the time I was done, I had about 2 books worth of material, and I was like, well, what do I do with it now? And I thought, well, there's all these people uploading stuff to Amazon, and they're making money, so maybe I can make $50. And
Right.
so I uploaded the first book, and I was totally broke. So I didn't have money for cover. I didn't have money for editing. I just uploaded it just to see what would
Wow.
happen.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. And I just, within 2 weeks, it was #1 bestseller.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
fantasy.
That's
So-
insane.
Incredible.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
I was utterly shocked, and I didn't really understand what was happening. Still not sure I understand what happened. But yeah, about a month later, I uploaded the second book. Still not edited, because I still didn't have any money. There's
Yeah.
a delay between the time you
Yeah,
upload the book and when you
definitely.
actually get paid. So yeah, then that's how I accidentally fell into writing, and the books became so successful that I didn't have to work anymore. So
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
incredible.
That's
I
amazing.
found a couple of jobs. I was teaching at a couple of colleges and doing some tutoring, and I was able to quit doing all that and work as a writer full time. So yeah.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
real.
that's a cool story. Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did not expect that. So after you upload these things, it gets all this hype. do editors and people start reaching out to you, or how does it like?
Yeah, they got really popular really fast, which attracted some attention.
Yeah.
And so I was contacted by, a couple of agents and somebody from a director from film and movies, and
Oh, cool.
I was contacted by Podium Audio, which ultimately I signed with to do the audiobooks for King's Dark Tidings.
Okay.
And then eventually it was kind of a funny story. I would always joke about it with my brother. He's a big fantasy fan, and so we talked about a lot of books and publishers and things like that. And of course, Tor being one of the major publishers, probably the number one publisher probably in fantasy. So he would joke with me. He's like, "Oh, have you heard from Tor yet?" I'm like, I would just laugh off. I'd be like, "No, they don't do that. They're not going to come." And so every time I would see him, he'd be like, "So did you hear from Tor yet?" I'm like, "No, that didn't happen." And then one day I checked my email, and damn, there's an email from Tor. And I was like,
Whoa,
"No,
what?
this doesn't happen." And so I texted him. I'm like, "Guess what? I heard from Tor." And then I didn't hear from him for like 2 days.
Oh
And
no.
and so I finally call him up. I'm like, "Did you not see my message?" He's like, "Yeah, I thought you were joking."
Oh.
So yeah, that's kind of, it leads into your next question about between doing indie and traditional publishing. Yeah, Tor contacted me about to see if I would be interested in writing a new series for them. And after discussions and negotiations, I ended up signing on a 3-book deal with them for Shroud of Prophecy series.
Right.
And I don't really consider it a shift. I didn't really transition to traditional. I consider myself a hybrid author. So I do
Fair.
both indie and traditional at the same time. And that's kind of how I prefer it. I like spreading out my resources so that,
Yeah.
all my eggs aren't in one basket.
Yep.
For sure.
Has writing the Shroud of Prophecy series been a little bit more stressful, or sort of a different process since you're writing it for under, I guess, the Tor banner, or do you approach it the same way that you do KDT?
I do approach it the same way I do KDT. I just write what I want to write and
Okay.
submit it and see what they say, and overall it's been pretty easy going. My editor's been pretty hands off with it. I mean, he
It's nice.
gets back to me when he needs to, but otherwise I've been pretty much allowed to pursue my creative interests on my own.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So so it's been good. It's been good for both.
Nice.
Sweet.
Cool.
So KDT then is still self-published. All the Tales of Terralore and everything, that's all still
Yes.
self-pub. Awesome.
Cool.
Yes. Except for, of course, the audiobooks, which are through Podium.
Right.
Right.
Which are
Yeah.
incredible.
Yes. Okay. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah,
So
we can't skip that over, dude.
yeah. The audiobooks, there's two series that I always tell people are like the most well-produced audiobooks ever. And that is King Killer and King's Dark Tidings, both of which happen to have Nick Podell.
Yep.
How did you get Nick Podell? Is it awesome working with him or what?
Well, actually, I just kind of talked to the people at Podium, told them kind of what I would want to hear in a narrator. I wasn't really familiar with any narrators at the time, and still not so much, but told them what I would want to hear from one, and then they chose Nick Podell.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I listened to some of what he'd done, and he's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a really nice guy too. Usually when working with an audiobook narrator through a publisher, they don't really want the narrator and the author talking to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
They want everything to go through the publisher.
Yeah.
But I I told them that I would really like to talk to him directly, and they ended up connecting us.
Yeah.
And it's it's amazing even just talking to him on the phone, because that voice that he does, his narrator voice, is just his voice. Like,
Yeah,
it
I
sounds like
know.
that.
It's
So
crazy.
it's not something he puts on. That's just how he sounds. And so, and it
Oh.
sounds great. So, there were some times during KDT when he would maybe not know how to pronounce something, and he would just shoot me a text or call me, and I'd explain. So just
Cool.
Yeah.
during the recording, but yeah, he's absolutely phenomenal. I know I've been super lucky to have him work on my stuff.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine trying to be a narrator and see the word Sieclia for the first time
Yeah.
and be like, how do I
Exactly.
pronounce it?
Well, it's funny, like, because I do make up a lot of words, and there's the Elven language, there's different languages throughout the books. And so I actually recorded audio clips
Oh, cool.
of me saying these words,
Nice.
which is harder than it sounds, because
I bet.
I can hear them in my head, but then trying to make my mouth make those sounds can be a challenge. But
Yeah.
I figured if I can't say it, then he should know.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
Yeah.
I recorded them for him, and then he copied what I was able to do. So
Cool.
Yeah.
It really is like one of the best produced series that I think I've ever listened to. And mind you, Nick Podell is like seriously an amazing narrator, but just the voices that he chooses for the characters, Rezkin.
Right. We all love the voice of
We
Rezkin.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
That
It's
is
perfect. It
Rezkin.
is
That's how he
exactly
sounds.
what I
Yeah.
picture Rezkin would be. I mean, it's like to the dot, which is
Right.
really like something that, I mean, it just goes above and beyond what you would expect from
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and it just really is special, man.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine like you mentioned talking to Nick Podell on the phone. I couldn't imagine like getting on the phone and talking with him and it's just like Rezkin or Wesson. Like, what, dude? Like my mind wouldn't be able to handle it. Yeah, you really hit the jackpot with both Nick Podell and Chris McGrath as your cover
Yes.
illustrator. Like we just had Chris McGrath on the show a few episodes ago.
I watched that episode.
Oh, did you?
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we're all huge fans of his. And yeah, his covers, like especially, man, KDT 5, like this just looks so incredible. What's it been like working with him? Have you guys had much interaction?
Yeah, so it was kind of funny because I do not know artists at all. I don't know any artists. I don't know any contemporary artists. But I was always such a huge fan of the covers that I saw, like on Mistborn and some of the other books that Chris McGrath has done, and that I had actually looked up who did the cover art. It was the only time I've ever done that, and I remembered his name, and so when I needed new covers and Podium asked me, what I would want, and I explained kind of what I would like, and I didn't even think about, asking for Chris McGrath, of course.
Yeah.
But then they came back with an email and they're like, Chris McGrath's going to do your cover art, and I was like, what?
Yes.
The only artist that I could possibly have named.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. It was amazing because I love his artwork so much. So yeah, I was just kind of dancing on air, but
yeah.
But yeah, he's really cool. We don't do a lot of communication. I mean, I email him with, descriptions, maybe a scene, maybe character descriptions, things like that, kind of what I'd like to see.
Okay.
And then he does what he wants.
Right.
He has the creative freedom to kind of take what I say and then either include it or not. And whatever comes out is amazing. So I can't really complain. Sometimes he takes a little bit of artist liberty, so it doesn't quite connect with the books. But either way, they're stunning covers. So
yeah.
Yes.
Well, so for Reign of Madness, that cover, like, tell me if it's different for you, but that's exactly how I picture the Dark Tidings costume. I thought it was so incredible. Is that how you see it or no?
Yeah, he did a really good job on coming out with that. And I actually tried my hand at a little sketch beforehand to kind of give him what was going on in my head. And he kind of took that sketch and ran with it. And so I think that one came out really well. And I love with the Coliseum in the background, and he's still sketched over it.
Yeah.
Just looking menacing,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great one.
Speaking of which, and I don't feel like this is spoilery, but was the Dark Tidings outfit, was that sort of based on the Predator at all?
Well, it did end up looking a little more predatory than I had anticipated. Because when I was describing it to him and I was trying to explain it, I'm like, kind of like the Predator. And I think, kind of took that description and ran with it.
Sure.
That wasn't really the intent, but
yeah,
it looks really cool.
It worked. Yep,
Yeah.
it worked.
Awesome. Okay, so I have to ask, is there any update on signed copies? Because I've been like, should I just order all the hardcovers now that they're out? I'm like, but I really want them signed. Is there any update on that front?
So yes, I am talking to some various peoples about doing a Kickstarter with collector's editions.
Okay,
Nice.
cool.
That will be signed, and something really phenomenal hopefully come out of that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
originally I was just planning on doing some kind of signing so that I could sign the regular hardcovers that came out over the summer, but then this other idea presented itself, and so I'm in talks about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, any special editions or anything, I mean, you'll like just take my money, just have it. Like, will there be any more merch in the KDT store on your website?
Yeah, I'm planning on it. I've got the t-shirts, and I've added some keychains, which I make myself by my very
cool.
hand, by the way. So
That's awesome.
Nice.
you can fingerprint them and get my fingerprints off them.
Wow.
That'll be Spencer's job.
Yeah.
I made some of these cool little, these are leather bookmarks. I'm thinking
Oh,
about adding
cool.
to
Oh,
it.
I like the
sweet.
rules.
Yes.
Sick.
So
I would totally
Awesome.
buy one of those.
Yeah,
those
for
are
sure.
those are sweet.
add that to it maybe. But,
Those are great.
yeah. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, I'd like to expand, do some more of that stuff. Maybe not stuff that I have to make myself, but
Yeah.
But I have this cool. I don't know if you've ever seen the advertisements for the Glowforge, the laser cutter.
Oh, yes.
I recently bought one of those, as CNC cut a laser.
Yep.
cutter. So I've been
Cool.
playing with it and adding stuff to the shop.
Nice.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've seen some pretty amazing stuff come out of those things.
Yeah. I've been wanting like a Reskin like mug, just like with his face on it, or like the Raven or something, so that when we're on the podcast, I just have my Reskin cup.
Yeah.
It'll probably be filled with whiskey most of the time, but okay. Does anybody else want to pop in with a question before I keep going?
Yeah, so I have a question for you. This is more of a general blanket question. Maybe you don't, if you do, how many books are planned for this KDT series? Do you know? Or is it kind of like in the works? You're kind of just going by, what happens?
Well, I know the story I want to tell, and so it will be as many books as it takes to tell the story.
Okay.
So I can't tell you exactly the number of the books.
That's a great answer. I'm all for that. That's perfect.
You've started these Tales of Terralore, and I are all of them going to be prequel books for like what we've seen in the main books, or will they be kind of just like different parts of the world in KDT? Or
Yeah, so Tales of Terralore is really supposed to be kind of a catch-all series for side tales and prequels that come out of it. Just the way you have to upload to Amazon and Audible kind of necessitated another way of doing it rather than including them in the main series. So yeah, I have a couple of other spin-offs or side tales that I'd like to put out. Of course, there's just time. There's
right.
Yeah,
everything.
for sure.
But I did write in the prequel, in the prologue for book 3, I believe it was, a little story about Resh and Brant's little brother.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Remember in the prologue that I had planned to write that side tale before book 5 came out, but there was just not time. So
Okay.
so that one will also be joining as
Ooh.
soon as I can get that one written.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Nice. I like Resh. Is there any plans for like a Kai origin story? I want it so bad.
I think that would be really fun, and I've got a lot of ideas for it. I've actually had many requests for that one,
Yeah.
interestingly.
Yeah.
People really want to know about Kai's life, so
Yeah.
maybe there may be something to that.
Cool.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Chris, you got anything?
Yeah, so I guess one thing I wanted to ask about is, there's this kind of common trope in fantasy stories where oftentimes the main character goes from like a 0 to being the hero, maybe over the course of the book. Whereas in these series, Rezkin starts off as frankly just being
The
a
best.
badass right
Yes.
away.
Yeah.
Just, he's good at everything, often to the annoyance of other people in the stories. He's just amazing at everything. And the things that he does struggle with are often things that normal or average people struggle with less. So I would say, relationships, friendships,
Yep.
Social stuff.
feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was curious about how that evolved, where that idea came from, kind of why you chose to do it that way. Is there anything to it, or?
Well, Reskin really kind of wrote his own story. He's a very developed character in my mind, and he kind of popped in there, and I guess this is just my subconscious, creating something amazing, because that's what I do.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
But no, I mean, my stories are very character driven, and when I write, it's the writing is based on what the characters are thinking and doing, and Reskin, this is it's just who he is, and
Okay.
he just came across like that to me. Like I said, when I first started writing him, some of the funnier scenes, and I just imagined this, really amazing warrior who's, basically a badass at everything. And but then these quirky little funny scenes where he completely misunderstands what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I just kind of built the story around the funny scenes, really, to be honest. So
Okay.
I don't know. It was my little dry sense of humor, I suppose.
Sure.
Perfect.
This won't spoil anything, but I just want to say the conversation about cats and dogs
Yes.
is one of the funniest
Reskin's
things.
cat, yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I love that. Who you want to let the cat out of the bag here?
Yeah.
What are we
Why would
letting
you
the
do
cat
that?
out of the bag about?
Oh,
it's so great. I love those scenes. I think I've hit all of the spoiler-free questions I really wanted to ask before we go into spoilers. So you guys go ahead if there's
well, no.
anything.
So I was just looking at Chris's second kind of follow-up question, which I totally agree with. Do you want to ask it, or do you want me to ask it?
You can ask it.
Okay.
Go for it.
So basically, following up on Chris's question, I kind of had the same thought. Like, why did you choose to make Reskin's main path of growth be in regard to the real 1 and 2 friendships and all that stuff, feelings and relationships?
Well, to me, it was just kind of a natural progression of his character, because somebody who's been raised in the way he was raised, and we're not in the spoiler section, so I'm not going to get into
Sure.
that. But somebody that was raised in the way he was raised obviously would have problems with any kind of bond with other human beings, other people. And then you've got these very naive couple of people, Krisha and Tam, who meet him, and they're both just open, and they don't really understand, the darkness in the world. They're just kind of on their first adventure out of their homes, and then they meet this person who knows all of the darkness in the world, but really hasn't experienced any of the light. And how those two come together and kind of mesh and form really a bond between them that maybe not everybody would understand. But they connect in a way that is really unusual, and they connect through their misunderstandings.
Yes.
together.
That's
And
so true.
Reskin really, he is, he is overpowered in his abilities, physical abilities, but emotionally, he's very much a child,
Yeah.
and he
It's
doesn't
true.
understand that kind of social interaction. So it just seemed like a natural progression for his character to have to learn, to have to go through that.
Yep.
And every character needs their weakness,
Yeah.
and certainly his emotions are his weaknesses.
Yeah.
And some people, some readers who aren't maybe in tune with their own emotions don't really get that about him. I think sometimes people complain if he's too overpowered. They say he doesn't have any weaknesses, but he really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the world is more than just fighting and battles,
Yeah.
and he has to learn to integrate with other human beings.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, any other final spoiler-free questions before we get into talking about spoilers?
Let's get into the spoilers.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. All right, listeners, this is your spoiler warning for the entire series. Everything in this next discussion is on the table. So if you are not caught up with King's Dark Tidings, you may want to come back later. This is your spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. You've been warned. Kel Kade, why did you kill Palace? I cried. I like I said, I've read the second book so many times. It's probably the most that I've read out of the whole series. Every single time, without fail, I am sobbing when Palace dies. Oh my gosh. Can you talk about like why him, why Palace? And you did it in such a good way too, because we have not only the emotional attachment of like having this character that we love, but also he has this budding romance with Assyria, and you're like, oh, this is going to go great places. This is such a great story, like the noble and the commoner, and like they're gonna be in a relationship, and then he dies. So yeah, what was the process like for writing that?
I actually got really choked up when I was writing that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just he needed to die.
He had to go.
It's my sadism. But no, he this is the first time that that any of them have really lost something important.
Yep.
And this is certainly the first time for Reskin, and he has never experienced what it means to lose somebody that he has learned to care about.
Right.
And he still doesn't understand the fact that he cares about somebody. This isn't something that he can process. And so when he suddenly loses it and it hurts, he doesn't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's the first time he really feels like he doesn't have control over something. And the feelings that he gets, and then the feelings that the other characters get toward him, is something that he has to figure out. He has to endure, especially Malseus's anger. He's really angry. He feels like Rez can let him down, and blames him for getting Palis involved in it in the first place. So it was just a way that emotionally the characters have to grow, and they have to learn that the world isn't maybe the happy place that they had thought it was before something happened. Things got serious all of a sudden.
It was an incredibly impactful scene, even through the sadness. It was very, very meaningful, and I see what you say. It sets up a lot for the way that the emotional standards go, like between the characters.
I love the part where Palace is dead and everybody is climbing into the boat, and just kind of like one by one you see like every character realize that Palace is gone. And I forget which character it is, but Reskin is kind of like slumped against the side of the boat, and it was either, correct me if I'm wrong, it was either like Sheila or Malseus or Brant. One of them came up to him and was just like hitting him and like he was just like sitting there taking it because like he felt like you could tell that he felt like he had just let everybody down. And it was just this moment where all of these people up to that point, like Frisha and Sheila, there was all this tension and everybody was like butting heads and not really, like some people were getting along and there were like certain cliques and whatnot, but everybody was kind of at odds to some extent. And then they're all in this boat and Palace is dead and all of them come together to comfort each other. And there was, some lashing out between them too, but especially Sheila's reaction, like Frisha comforting Sheila was really deal. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Speaking of this, before I forget, speaking of Sheila, one of no matter how many times I read it, the part that I laugh out loud at every single time, I think it's either book 3 or 4. I think it's in book 3. And Sheila and Frisha are on the deck of this ship and Frisha, and just the way Nick Podell says it too is so good. Frisha goes, because there's all these refugees on the ship and like there's nobody like of importance nearby, and Frisha's like, who are you trying to impress, Sheila? And she goes, the world, Frisha.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that kills me every single time. The world, Frisha. Okay, where does somebody else want to go? I'm looking for my questions.
So I have a question. This just popped into my head, and it may have been answered before. You guys may know the answer, but when Rezkin basically, and I think King Bordred like called this assassination when he was when all the strikers turned on him and the Sengoku were like, like everybody went to kill him, right? This is right before he left the thing. And I forget this guy's name, shame on me, but the Sen that's laying there and gives him rule 1 and 2, right? Remember which one
Pater?
that was? Pater.
Is either Pater or JR doing? I don't know.
Okay, one of those two is laying there, and he gives those last, the first 2 things. Was that just because he was like dying and in a weird state and whatnot, or is that like really what like he wanted to say to them?
No, he definitely messed up. He was dying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For whatever reason,
he was like on his own world, like just thinking about life, and he said these things, friends and whatnot, and that makes sense.
That was not what he intended to say.
Yeah, I've often kind of wondered if like that's cool to get an answer to that, because I've always had the feeling that it was something that he like messed up on and didn't mean to say, but in the back of my head I was like
what if he was like turning like he was like trying to make sure Rezkin like could have a good life,
that'd be interesting. Well, I'm sure we'll find out more about like what exactly was going down at the fortress in later books.
Well, I think that because they talk about like in the newest book, they say something about like when Bordrin's assassination failed, right? When I'm assuming that's when Bordrin's like kill Rezkin, like send all your guys at him, right?
Oh.
Because I just like
I think you mean Cadian.
That's what I was thinking. Cadian,
I'm sorry,
right?
That's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant.
I was confused.
I'm sorry, Cadian, the crazy demon king. Sorry.
Yeah.
Was Cadian the one that like told the fort to like kill Rezkin like way back when it happened? Like was Cadian like, you need to kill him now, get rid of him because I'm going to be the badass?
Yeah, so Cadian actually found out about Rezkin.
Okay, and then he ordered the assassination.
The assassination.
All right. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's
that tracks with what I
sorry, I didn't mean to say Bordrin. That's not at all.
No, I need to go back and re-listen to the scene where Conovan and Lucilia are all in the room and they're kind of like explaining that whole thing. Because that's the scene that I'm always getting things like mixed up on, just because I have so many of like my own theories that like meet with that scene and I forget how they all kind of connect. So I always need to go back and look at that scene to kind of figure that all out. So which book up to this point was your favorite to write and why? And do you have a favorite character that you like to write?
Oh my goodness.
Good question.
Yeah,
well,
that's got to be a tough one.
My favorite character to write is Rezkin. I mean,
sure.
He's just so dynamic. in his abilities and his naivety, and I really connect with him a lot. I mean, I'm not an assassin as far as you know, but I really feel like there's a lot of myself in that character.
Yeah.
I really like Tam.
Oh yeah.
So, getting to write part of his story on his own in book 5 was really fun. Not exactly fun for Tam.
Yeah.
Story, but yeah, it was good to be able to write his side of the story. As far as which book is my favorite, has been my favorite to write. It may not be the popular vote, but I think book 3 was really fun for me to write. Because that was the book where there was a real shift in the story, and I wanted to do that on purpose, because it went from being mostly swords and warriors with a touch of magic to really being more of a high fantasy story in book 3.
For
and I know it threw some people for a loop, but I really wanted it to feel like the characters kind of fell down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
They were living in this sort of blissful ignorance about magic and about the greater magical world. And then when they reach the island of Kael, which, they were sent there by Bilior, they suddenly, their eyes were opened to this huge world of magic that they didn't understand existed before. And so I think it was fun opening up that part of the story, like, opening the doors to the magical realm, sort of speak. So that's where the story really took a shift, a turn into something more, something bigger than what they anticipated was happening. And that was kind of how I had always planned it to be. So I think it turned out the way I wanted it.
Awesome.
I do have a question for book 3. So and maybe this hasn't like completely been answered, or maybe I missed it. Because like I said, I was listening on 1.8 speed, so maybe it was just something I missed. But when Rezkin touched the door and it like almost killed him, why was he sent then immediately into that paranoid episode? Was that just him like kind of catching up with his Ielvenon self?
Sort of, yeah. So it's sort of explained in book 5. Whenever Rezkin started using his magic, like he didn't, everything he had done up to book 3 had been very passive,
passive magic.
He didn't even realize he was using magic. And so up until book 3, he had never experienced the effects of using his power. So when he gets into book 3, and then suddenly he has this surge of power from the door, and he has to fight back using his own power that he doesn't even realize he has. It opened up that magical bottle, that stopper that's been keeping down the madness, the paranoia.
Okay.
That makes so much more sense.
Okay, that's awesome.
Because there was a scene in book 5 where he uses his power, and then he
starts,
when he comes out of it, he gets really paranoid.
Exactly. He starts to go a little crazy.
It's like he prepares to defend himself against the people around him who are his allies at the time, right? So,
definitely.
And I love the way that you've written that too, because every time he's going through one of those like mini paranoid episodes, there's just something that like shifts in the writing where you can tell immediately that that's what's going on. And so sometimes like he'll show up to Kyle and he'll be like, there's Tyrion and Frisha, they're plotting against me. And just there's this immediate shift that's so well written where like every time it happens, you can just see that kind of taking over in his head. I love it. Oh, and so then my other question about book 3, since we're talking about book 3 a little bit. So why was he starting to get hungry in Chenaria? Like was something starting during that time? Is that why his hunger started to become more and more?
It really kind of goes back to the loss of Palis. because
okay.
that was when he first experienced the intense emotions, and his Elvenon powers are related to his emotions. And
Right.
so
Okay.
as he becomes more emotional, more understanding, or at least more experience with his emotions, his power is fluctuating, and he begins to expend a little bit more power. Like when he's in Channeria, he actually uses it a little more than he had before, and he's starting to grow hungrier because the Elvenon need to eat a lot in order to power their energy.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that makes a lot of sense for sure. All right. Does anybody else want to hop in while I look through the questions?
Yeah, I've got just a quick one, and this potentially could be something that you will tell us later. If you can tell us, is there a reason why Reskin gives Tam Kingslayer and not Blade Sunder?
Ooh.
Foreshadowing, maybe.
And you can not answer. That's totally
you
fair.
can say read and
Totally
find
fair.
out.
Yeah.
I don't know. You'll just have to keep reading.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I was like, there's something there. Okay, so we got to talk about the ending to book 5, because obviously that's what's on all of our minds right now. We're actually just talking about this before you hopped on and having a little bit of a back and forth about it. So Reskin dies and he gets brought back by Baringish.
Yep.
And once he's back in his body, kills Baringish, everything. He has like this big change of heart. Like I would have expected him to be like, I got to get back to Kyle and get back to everybody. But as he awakens, the dragon comes out of its shell, which I'm sure is significant.
Yeah.
And he's like, I have the option now to go on with my own quest and do my own thing. So if you can talk about it, and it's totally fair if it's a read and find out kind of thing, but is this like, have we seen like this sudden change of heart or change of mindset, or does it have to do with like something being different about this like retrieval?
I'm trying to say how much to say without spoiling. spoiling.
I just want to see him get back to his friends. Okay.
So Reskin has always had a unique way of doing things. He's always followed the rules and what he thinks is his purpose. And as he's become emperor, his methods of doing things have really become restricted.
Yeah.
And so when he realizes he no longer has to be emperor, for at least for the time being, he can do things his own way again. And
He could be the res potentially, right? Kind of act how.
well, I'm not gonna say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. There's this strange rumor, I guess, that for some reason book 5 is the final book in the series, which
weird.
I don't really understand
that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
That would be frustrating.
That would be a really lame way to end the series.
Yeah.
But no, he's not going to just abandon the cause. He's just going to be approaching it from a different.
Yeah, I would say that was going to be my theory, is that Reskin's gonna like he's gonna subterfuge and like work his way to make Malseus, right?
Or Tyrion.
Tyrion, to like basically like make that go better, right? He's gonna be working in the shadows, and then eventually he'll come out and say something. But
yeah,
it's just
I've always kind of thought that Tyrion is going to be like the end game, like king or emperor or whatever, and then Frisha would have her chances.
If he could stop spilling wine, then yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I could see that.
Okay, so I have kind of a fun question. If the books were to be made into an adaptation, which scenes from books would you absolutely want to keep just the way they are without Amazon changing everything?
Oh, you mean for like a TV or film?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a hard one.
That is, that would be hard for me to answer.
So many scenes, so many. I think it would be really hard to do an adaptation, first of all, because
Yeah.
so much of Reskin's personality and so many,
It's in his head.
it's all in his head.
Yeah.
And I think that an adaptation, it would probably lose a lot of the humor, because
Yeah.
humor is
In
his
head.
confusion.
Yeah.
That's right. And the way
Yeah.
he thinks, right?
That's true.
And so I think it would be a much more serious kind of show
For sure.
than what the books are. And I wish there was a way to kind of bring that humor in some way. Maybe a really great screenwriter could accomplish that. But
There could be
Yeah.
like a Dexter Morgan.
That's what I
inner
was just
monologue.
thinking.
Yeah.
Is, yeah, the kind of the Dexter
The
inner
out loud
monologue,
inner
yeah.
monologue going on.
yeah, so I wish there was a way to kind of preserve that in the series, and because it can get kind of dark otherwise. You know, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did our first episode on King's Dark Tidings, I was like, man, it's hard to like tie this down to any one subgenre, because I'm such a big grimdark fan that's like one of the big things that I like about this series is kind of the darker moments, like with the Thieves Guild in book 1 and 2 and stuff. And so we were talking on the first time we did this, I'm like, is this grimdark? And we were kind of going back and forth on it. Cause yeah, without the humor, then there are a lot of like darker moments and more like serious undertones to this. I think for me, and if you guys want to answer this as well, I think for me, like, I know it's such a random scene that you guys will probably be like, what? I didn't see that coming. But the scene in book 2 where Tam sits down with Reskin, and Reskin like tells him like who he really is. And Tam had just told him like, no, I'll always be your friend. Like, how could you doubt that I would ever like not be your best friend? And Reskin's like, once you know like what I'm about to tell you, you may change your mind. He's like, no, never. And then sure enough, like Tam has this whole freak out and has to go on this journey. He talks to I think Malseus and Wesson and all these other people, and he comes back and he kind of learns his lesson a little bit, and he comes back to Reskin's room, and Reskin is like writing him a banknote saying like, here, this is funds to take care of you for the rest of your life. And Tam's like, no, I don't need this. And Reskin's like, is it not enough? And it's just, it's such a good scene. I would want that scene like completely unblemished in an adaptation, because that is my absolute favorite. Everything from Kai throwing him up against the wall and yelling at him about being like a terrible friend, and then Tam coming back and giving like the most like heartfelt swear of allegiance, like fealty. That whole thing was just so perfect, and I cry every time I read it. That I would not want that changed. So that's my favorite. What about you guys? If there was a movie or TV show, are there any scenes that you just wouldn't want messed with at all?
I could see like HBO taking some liberties with the Lareshi, Lon Laresh, you know, so like maybe keep that the same as the books, you know. I don't think they need to take that any further.
Sure. I would probably say like the ending of Mage of No Renown, where he like Tika dies and whatnot, and that whole scene where he like battles the assassin and then the leader of the Battle Mage Academy comes. I would want that to stay just as it is.
For sure.
So I think that's a great scene.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know, with any adaptation, you just always kind of hope that they stay true to the books and the characters.
Does, it never does.
I know it never does. I know.
I just like, it took me a minute after you said that, Chris, but I just understood what you're talking about with HBO.
Come on, man.
Just everyone in Lon Laresh just completely naked.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, give it the Game of Thrones treatment or something. You know,
I loved the time in Lon Laresh though. I love
that was very cool.
I love how every book we've gotten like a different piece of culture, and like in this book, like we see the Pruari, which one of my notes from earlier was the foreshadowing in book 3, when I was reading book 3 this week, I was like, oh, there's a ton of foreshadowing here. There's Rezkin would never ritual bond with a Pruari on the ship. The nobles were talking about it. And then and Frisha was like, I don't know, it was the whole thing. She was like, why do you think he wouldn't? And they're like, I don't think Rezkin would do anything he doesn't want to do. So there was that whole thing, which he absolutely did in book 5. And then also in book 3, Princess Arisiel, if I have the name right, I think I do, said Rezkin woke up with the cat on his chest. And she says, if a cat wakes up on your chest, it means that you're either going to fall in love or die soon. And I was like, holy shit.
try both.
Yeah. I was like, she nailed it. Okay, so going along with the same like adaptation talk, do you have a fan casting for King's Dark Tidings? Like who would play your favorite characters? And like I mean, Henry Cavill plays Rezkin, obviously, right? Like that has to be who plays
you
him.
know, he's a little too old for Rezkin. You know?
That's true. Now he
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
that's what I thought too.
He definitely has a look, but
Yeah.
he'd be like Rezkin in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's too old for him, but we can't have, you know, Rezkin and the Witcher be the same guy. That doesn't.
That's true.
Yeah, that's
true.
true. That's true.
Be too much of a mesh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Every time I think of Rezkin, I think of like a younger.
Every time you
Henry
think of
Cavill.
any badass
I know.
person
You
with
think of
I know.
Henry
Henry
Cavill, dude.
Cavill,
I know.
as always.
Every single time.
I know. Hey, Henry Cavill is a good-looking
Dude,
man.
he is.
And
He
he
is.
works for almost any role you can think of. So
Yeah, that's
James
true.
Bond, a Henry Cavill James Bond. Are you freaking kidding me? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry. Tangent. Go ahead. What would be your fan casting?
I can't even answer. I'm
Oh.
so bad with names and I'm not caught up on the whole Hollywood thing. So
Oh,
I
okay.
wouldn't
Same
even
same
know.
for me. I
That's
couldn't answer
fine.
that
I was
question.
like,
if
yeah,
you asked
I'm
me.
having a hard time thinking of younger actors.
Yeah.
First of all, that would I could think of people that'd be an older Rezkin maybe, but
Yeah.
I honestly think it would have to be some kind of an unknown. You know,
it would. Yeah,
somebody
that's
that-
fair.
somebody
Definitely.
that wouldn't overshadow Rezkin, and I think I think it definitely have to be unknown.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I feel the same as you guys. I think I have like an idea in my head of like how everybody looks. Like for me, Frisha is, did you guys ever see the movie when we were kids called, I think it was called Dragon Quest, and it was like a Disney like animated movie. If just Google Dragon Quest and the brunette girl, that's exactly how I picture Frisha. But anyway, yeah, I can't think of any actors either. But I know how they all look in my head. Do you have any plans for like commissioning art or like any more concept art or anything? I know there's a few pieces of concept or fan art that are out there. Like there's a Assyria one, there's one for Tam, Rezkin, of course. Do you have any more plans for art?
I don't think I've seen these artworks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, go to the King's Dark Tidings wiki, and there should be.
There's a whole wiki for it, dude.
I didn't know there was a wiki.
Oh,
That's
really?
I didn't either
Yeah.
until just now.
Yeah. There should be Tam in Assyria, and I can't remember if there's any other ones, but
That's cool.
I should probably Google my own stuff more often. I'm afraid of what I'll find.
Yeah, I could see why you wouldn't though. I would
Yeah.
probably be a little sketchy to Google
Yeah.
my stuff, but
I don't think I've ever Googled my own name. I think I'd be
no.
afraid to.
Well, we're not famous. So
Yeah.
I was just gonna
it
say
doesn't work very good
But,
for
like,
us.
who knows?
You'd be more disappointed by the no results.
That's
found.
true. That's very true. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, but do you guys want to hop in with anything? I don't want to take up your questions.
No, I'm ready for the Reddit questions whenever those are coming.
Okay, so I have a question that many people asked on Reddit,
Okay.
and so many people asked it that I just worked it into our own questions because I didn't know who to credit with it. So I genuinely love the idea of having these two brands that one's like an anon, that, wow, that's hard to say, who like took his form for a while and then became him. And now Rezkin is like, okay, well, you're the same person. So you're going to turn into like the most deadly, like undefeatable fighting duo
Yeah.
that is ever to be. And so I'm super excited to see where they go. But the main question that we were getting on Reddit was this a result of something happening in book 4 where it's like, uh-oh, I accidentally put Brant in like 2 different scenes, or was this the plan from the get-go?
Well, Brant needed a bigger role.
Yeah.
You know, he's a cool character. He's got a lot of potential, but he didn't have his own special little arc going on. So
Yeah.
I needed to do something interesting with Brant, and the opportunity kind of presented itself. It's not the first time that a character has been doubled in the story,
Right.
and it's obviously not the last. So
sure.
I thought it was a really good way to kind of bring him out and give him some character. You'll see him a lot more in probably the next book. I didn't get to revisit him. There's so many threads now, so many different characters. Stories. I could only visit so many in this one book.
Yeah. Will we get more Malseus and Asaria?
That's what I wanted to ask. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Asaria is one of my favorite characters. She was in the last few books.
Yeah, she's awesome, and I love like you've set up like the perfect like romantic subplot. Like they're like bonded together in like this magical way because of this accident, but also he's got like this life stone that like holds her soul, and that's like so poetic. And yeah, I'm super excited to see where they go as far as like that kind of whole plot line. Other people wanted to know, again, this is just several people asked this, so I didn't know who to credit. Do you have all the rules written out somewhere? And
this is a good question.
Yeah. Will we see them all eventually?
I have the rules.
Oh, okay.
I have to keep them straight in my head.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't have them all memorized like some people. But people ask me all the time, oh, can you publish a list of the rules? And I always say, no, it's like a scavenger hunt. Go find them yourself.
That's funny.
I like that.
Fun.
Yeah, that's good. Stay
engaged. But I know there's several lists people have kept up with and published
Put together.
Yeah. Can you say like how many we've seen so far? I haven't seen these lists. I don't know how many.
They said they're like 256 rules total, right, or something like that.
Yeah, but how many have we seen?
No, I know.
I don't think we've seen all of them.
Yeah, no, you haven't. Yeah. And I didn't like go down and list all of the rules, through 264 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So, whenever it pops up for a new rule, I just fill it in next to the blank.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah,
I like it.
So a question I had, and we had, I don't know if you saw our Mage of No Renown episode, but we had a pretty big debate right from the get-go before we could even get our spoiler warning out. In fact, we had this big debate on whether Mage of No Renown, can you read it before Free the Darkness, or should you read it between 4 and 5?
Well, I wrote it to be read between 4 and 5, but I also wrote it so that it could be read as a standalone.
Oh, okay.
So you can read it. If you've never read the King's Dark Tidings series, there's no reason you can't. There's nothing in it that would be confusing if you haven't read King's Dark Tidings.
Right.
So it was kind of a way to bring new readers in if they want to pick it up and read just a single book instead of having to start a whole series, see if they like it, see if they like the writing style, and then they can lead into King's Dark Tidings from there. But for people who were already fans, I think it's best to read it between books 4 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah, that to me makes the most sense, is in between 4 and 5, because there's a lot of tiebacks in 5 to Mage No Renown, which I was happy for.
But I do stand corrected, because I was like, no, you can't read it before Free the Darkness. But we've heard it from herself, from Kel herself.
I think for maximum reading value, you should read it between 4 and 5, just for the maximum value. But it's possible to read it without reading the rest of the books.
Right. Okay.
Can you talk about and I understand if you can't, if this will be in a future book or whatever. But can you talk about what some of the other characters were doing off screen in book 5, or will that be addressed later?
Most of it's going to be addressed later. Obviously, I won't be able to revisit every group.
Yeah.
It just gets tedious if I keep trying to go back and revisit.
Right.
You have to kind of imply that something important is going on. So, the thieves and assassins and everybody in Ashai, they're going about thieving and assassinating things. So you have to kind of imply that they're continuing on
They're all
normal
doing their
business.
jobs.
But there's going to be certain groups that I'll definitely revisit and kind of do a catch up. It probably won't be something that is going on at the same time as book 5, but kind of do a little review of what happened in between.
Okay,
Awesome.
cool. The last spoilery question that I have for our list of questions is, can you talk about what was the fruit that Bilior gave to Rezkin? Do we know anything about that now? Anything more than we did before?
Man, that was way back.
Yeah.
You've read the books more recently than I have, so I have to kind of jog my memory about that.
Yeah, so Bilior woke him up one morning and gave him a plum, and it made him see colors and stuff.
And then later on he mentions that he could see auras sometimes from eating that fruit, even in the newest book, I think he mentions that.
Yeah, so it was just kind of they always say you shouldn't eat anything the Fae
from the Fae, yeah.
That's right.
but yeah, it just kind of awakened some of Rezkin's powers, kind of
jump started
connected him with it a little bit,
opened up his eyes a little bit. Cool.
Okay, cool. All right, well, before we get into Reddit questions, Chris or Gabe, do you have any questions that you want to ask before we kind of get out of that section?
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about Frisha for a little bit briefly. I feel like Frisha's a character that has just been struggling like overall throughout the books.
Poor Frisha.
Yeah, everyone's kind of got their thing. I mean, Tam, for example, comes into his own when he starts to learn how to fight and becomes more of a leader. I'm just wondering if we're gonna get a similar payoff for Frisha potentially in the future, or what, or sort of, maybe what are your intentions with that character, or what are you envisioning when you write her, that kind of thing. What's the deal with Frisha, I guess?
Well, I think there's kind of a split in the KDT fandom between whether you love or hate Frisha, and I think that it's because when I first started writing her, it was a little equivocal. She comes across as two different personalities depending on who's reading her. And when I wrote her, I intended for her to be this very sweet, sincere kind of girl next door, very sheltered and not really aware of the darkness that resides in the world. And
right.
And she kind of wears her heart on her sleeve and just easily falls in love, and that kind of character. But then I got a lot of flack about her character because people didn't like, not everybody, but some people didn't like her. And I didn't really understand why until I listened to Nick's audiobook. And the way he read her is not the way I intended her to be written.
Okay.
Interesting.
And I can totally see it from the way he read her, that she comes across as kind of this snotty, stuck up,
right,
kind of spoiled brat.
Yeah.
And so what he interpreted to be her kind of snark, I was writing as sincere. And
interesting.
So I can totally see it from the other perspective now of what other people read. And so some people read her the way I intended her to be written. Some people read her the other way. And so there's this, mix of people who love her and hate her. But she's just kind of lost. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know where she fits in the world. And I think personally, I think it's totally understandable that she freaked out when she found out who Reskin really was.
Yeah, for sure.
And some people are really, really protective of Reskin, which is kind of funny considering who he is.
Yeah.
But they're very protective of him. They get angry with her for rejecting him. But if you look at it from her perspective, I mean, he turns out to be like the
Yeah. Not what she thought he was. For sure.
He's not exactly who she thought he was.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense to me that she would go for a more understandable, more secure character.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Than Kieran. He's pretty obvious about who he is. There's no subterfuge. He just is who he is.
Yep.
And, she kind of embraces that. But now in book 5, she's been taken and copied.
Yeah.
So there's going to be
I know.
a lot of
Man.
Why'd you have to do that to us? I'm so worried
it's
for
so
her.
good though, dude. It's so good though.
So yeah, she's definitely going to have to step up her game and do something to help herself, because it doesn't appear that anybody's coming for her.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody knows. Yeah. There's no way for anybody to know.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And on a side note on that, it was cool the introduction of Prince Thressen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
oh
definitely.
my gosh. I knew he was alive. I knew
know.
he had to be alive somewhere. That's great. I love that. So you mentioned Tyrion and the relationship with Frisha. And in any other book, it's so weird because in any other book, Tyrion would be like maybe my least favorite character. Like I would just hate like the stuck-up noble character. But Tyrion is like without a doubt, like he might be like my number one favorite character, like maybe next to Reskin or something. Like Tyrion, I love him so much, and I think that his character arc is so good.
Yeah.
And especially in book 2, when Reskin like goes out to that estate and like saves him from the poison and stuff, and they're like walking back to or maybe they're on horseback and they're headed back to like the city, and Tyrion just says, I would be so lucky as to be considered one of your friends, and Reskin just nods. That's another moment where I'm not quite like sobbing, but I'm almost there. Because like anytime somebody gets named, especially in that book, anytime somebody gets named one of his friends, it's like a big it's like a big moment for Reskin. And just seeing Tyrion then into book 3 start to change little by little, and then back in book 2, like apologizing to Frisha and like, no, of course I'll go buy you dresses in the city, and just that whole kind of arc kind of starts there. And I think that he is the character I look at when I'm like, that is like a perfect character arc. Okay, so going into Reddit questions, Gabe is going to start us out.
Yes, I want to start us off. So this is from Mess09.
Yeah,
he's a moderator for the King's Dark Tidings forum, I guess would be the word.
Reddit, yeah.
And he asked you how many
subreddit, man, come on.
Subreddit, sorry. How many Shaylins are there in the world, and how old are they really? Is his question.
Gosh, I haven't actually worked out how many Shaylins there are in the world. Because
40.
there's more than what exists in Ashai.
Okay.
Definitely.
And so the Ashayan kings have kind of claimed all of the Shaylins that are in Ashai, and distribute those to to sword bearers. And so within Ashai, it's illegal to own one unless you're a sword bearer. But outside of Ashai, there are additional Shaylins that aren't necessarily belonging to sword bearers.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So then it's just the crafter of the swords is to be credited for that, because obviously there was a person that made those Shaylins, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so like was he the only person that could do it?
Yeah.
Well, his name was Shaylin.
Okay. All right. I gotcha. Okay. Perfect.
So he was the only one who figured out how to make this specific type of blade. And, and so once he passed, there are no more.
Right.
Gotcha.
So are they regulated outside of Ashai, or is it kind of like people Like, can they outside of a shy, can they be like traded or stolen or whatever?
Well, they can be privately owned outside of a shy. However, as mentioned, the Ashayan kings of old have tried to acquire as many of them as possible.
Right. Okay.
So there aren't so many, and they're pursued by the strikers.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Gabe, do you want to do the rest of Mess's questions? That's the
Sure.
next two
Yeah,
there, too.
absolutely. So he or she mentions in book 2, there's a silly song about a boy, red paint, and a sheep. Is this meant to be a Wesson reference?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Good
cool.
catch.
Well,
That's
And
Yeah.
I had sort of planned that, and I was going to go down an even more obvious road about it, but then I decided that was a little too much. But yeah, Wesson considers because in Mage of Nowhere now, Dia really likes the color red, and so
Yep.
he considers collecting berries and
Yeah.
red. So that was just something silly to add.
okay.
Awesome.
Nice. When we did our Mage of No Renown episode, I think it was before we hit record. I think it was when we all first hopped on Zoom. Chris was like, was it just me or did we all die laughing when the sheep exploded?
Yeah.
We were debating whether that was supposed to be funny or not. But I was like, it had to be intentional.
It had
Right?
to be. It was so funny.
Either funny or terrifying.
Yeah.
a little dark humor, I guess.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
Yeah.
sure.
I might have a dark sense of humor.
Okay.
Yeah. and Wesson, oh my gosh, Wesson meeting up with the whole thing with Wesson going back to Ashai, that whole scene in like that whole meeting, that town meeting they had. Oh man, that was another moment where I started to tear up a little bit.
You cry at everything. Oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
No, I'm not kidding. Like King's Dark Tidings are one of the very few books that really like make me tear up quite a lot. The other series that does that is King Killer, because that has a lot of like really big emotional moments, and of course Nick Padell is giving that just brutal performance, like when Quoth is crying on his bed with Ari, and that kills me every time.
That got me too.
Yeah,
I remember
for
that.
sure.
Yeah, I understand, man. I'm not.
Yeah. but yeah, these books have such emotional like highs and lows. But yeah, then when he meets Dia, and he's been holding on to this for so long, and not only has she not gotten his letters, but he's like, I just wanted to apologize about the sheep. And she's like, oh,
Like,
really?
I
like,
forgot about that
okay.
forever ago.
she's like, I think about that from time to time, and it was terrible for sure, but no, you're fine, man. Like, it's all good. And he's like, oh, thank God. All right.
So Meso9's third question. Is the Aelvanon Sieclier one of the characters from the story you wrote set 1500 years before KDT?
Oh yeah, I think we talked
Also a good
about
question.
this.
Yeah,
earlier,
I think I'm just gonna, and then he says, will we ever get to read these? And is he Corolius's ancestor? Is his question.
Those are all good questions.
None of which can
TBD.
be answered.
So yes, he is in the story that I started writing that this 1200 years in the past.
Oh, that's cool.
But I'm not going to say more than that.
Okay, that's fair.
Fair enough.
That's fair.
Okay, so all these names on Reddit are so weird. I'm just gonna say it.
Though. Just say it like it is, dude.
You guys on Reddit need to choose better names, because half of these some of these I was like, I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. This one is 360-degree eyeball, and he or she says, why did the Fae and the water people not like the dragon ring or the dragon egg?
Dragon egg.
Yeah, sorry.
So the water people, when you say water people, I assume you're talking about the kind of
Mermaid folk.
mermaid
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
or are you talking about the Fae water spirits? I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the mermaid. Well,
yeah. So the mermaid, and it's, I don't talk about it in the story, but as basically another race of the Elvenon. So they're underwater
okay.
Elvenon.
Okay.
Oh, that's big. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
that is,
nice.
yeah.
So kind of why Reskin feels the connection to her, because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't know it at the time, but he's
Right.
feeling that Elvenon connection.
Interesting.
And so she knows what it is, what the stone is.
Right.
He doesn't know what the stone is, but she knows what it is. And that stone absorbs the magical power from Reskin.
Yeah.
Right.
He's sort of bonding with it and feeding it his energy.
Yeah.
And she recognizes that, and obviously doesn't approve of it. So
Yeah. And then did the Fae feel the same way about it? Like Billy Orr and all them?
Well, because because they want him to like embrace his power, right? Like isn't that the goal? And so when he's like subverting all his power to this dragon egg, when he should be embracing it, I could see why they would be like, why don't use that? Like, use your,
it's keeping him weak. It's sucking the energy out of him. So yeah, it's
such a weird predicament, because as it's stated multiple times in book 5, man, if he gives into that power, he could end up in the same position as Cadian.
Yeah.
So I don't know why everybody wants him to go off the deep end, but
well, yeah, I don't think he would go off the deep end. I think that there might be times, but I believe and maybe I shouldn't say that. Never mind. Go on.
Theories.
Yeah, theories. We're almost done here.
Okay. 3 Ninja 3 says, will we meet Sen in future books? Are there more races that we haven't met yet? And then what is happening with the thieves in book 5? We kind of talked about that a little bit. So will there be Sen in future books? Will we meet more races that we haven't met yet?
So are the Sen a race?
No,
or are those just they're just a human that's practiced like the Sen magic or whatever?
Okay, I'll let her answer.
So you'll find out more when I get to the stories that I started originally writing, that's set in the past.
Okay.
But they're human.
Okay.
But there's the 3 gods that are mentioned in KDP,
Reyna,
Mikael, Nico, and Reyna. And these gods bless humans with their powers. And so the Sen are blessed by Nico, the goddess of death and rebirth. And so they bear her power, which also happens to be the same power that's wielded by demons. And so that's why there's a connection between the Sen and the demons.
Right. Okay.
And but that doesn't make them evil. They're just happen to possess the same kind of power.
Right.
And so those characters, the Sen, are in that original series that I will eventually finish writing.
Okay. Cool. And so will we see more of them in KDT, or will we mostly see them in the prequel?
That they'll be seen in the other series.
Okay. And then are there other races that we haven't seen yet, like mermaids, that kind of thing?
Of course, there's going to be lots of them.
Oh, wow.
That's what I thought. I thought there'd be a ton, dude.
And there's some that are briefly mentioned in KDT for those who want to surf through it for them. But
get to it, Reddit. You heard it.
That's right, Reddit. Go to town.
So eventually we're going to try to keep the story interesting. So
cool.
I love it.
That's good news. Yeah.
Does anybody want to grab the next one?
Yeah, this guy's name, or he or she, is Representative by 437. His or her question is, has Reskin had dreams of Azaria before leaving the fortress, or did they only start after he left?
So he starts having the dreams of Azaria when the fortress awakens his power.
Oh,
because there's a connection between the fortress and the Elvenon.
Okay.
Between the fortress and what?
And the Elvenon.
Were you talking about Kyle though, right? Like the kingdom of Kyle. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That.
Oh, okay. I was thinking
not
the
fortress,
original fortress.
No, not the original.
No, not that one.
The Citadel.
Citadel.
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
Cool.
That makes sense.
Sure.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, cool.
I guess I'll grab the last one then.
There you go.
Yep.
Not a member of 9 Gag says What is the master swordsmith up to? Is he alive? Is he being tortured brutally because he made the black blade?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a very good
well,
question.
you'll see more of him in the story. So
Okay.
Aha.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
He's
Sweet.
coming back.
All right. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna get into our final thoughts here. So just in general, whether it's KDT or otherwise, what's kind of next for you? What are you working on now? What are you looking forward to?
right now I'm working on Sanctum of the Soul, which is the third book and final installment in Shroud of Prophecy series.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
You know, the first two being Fate of the Fallen and Destiny of the Dead.
Yeah.
So when I'm finished with Sanctum of the Soul, I will be turning back to KDT and writing some more in that series. So,
Okay.
but after Shroud of Prophecy is finished, I'll continue writing KDT, and then I have some new stories that I'm interested in exploring as well. So.
Nice.
Cool.
Cool. Do you think you'll do any more work with Tor? Do you think they'll bring you on for another either more Shroud of Prophecy books or something else?
I don't know. I will definitely look at publishing some additional stories traditionally, but if they don't get published traditionally, I'll self-publish. Either way, you'll get to experience them. So
For sure.
For
Which
sure.
is nice to have that. You have the options, which is great.
Is there anything you can tell us about book 6? Any hints or like just a back of the book kind of idea of what we're in for?
Spencer's digging for gold.
Fishing.
He's
I know.
digging for
if you
gold.
want hints, if you want hints about book 6, just read the epilogue for book 5.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, Reddit would have crucified me if I didn't
That's
ask.
true.
So
That's a good point.
I had to ask.
No harm in asking.
All right. Well, any other final thoughts from anybody else?
I'm happy.
Yeah,
This is a great
happy.
interview.
Awesome. Kel Kade, thank you so much for joining us. We've been looking forward to this for months, and this has just been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for having me on. This has been
Absolutely.
Yeah, great to see you, talk to you.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us for our chat with Kel Kade. I'll link her website and Twitter and everything else below. Be sure to give her a follow over there. And on your way out, don't forget to smash those like and subscribe buttons so that we can keep Gabe's shirt free of Tyrion's wine. As always, you can also follow us on Twitter @FilesFantasy to see what we're currently reading and recording. Upcoming episodes are a little bit of a mystery right now, but Halloween is right around the corner, so we'll definitely have a horror book on the schedule, but I don't know what that is at the moment. Other than that, this episode will most likely come out before the episode we did last week with Nicholas Eames and MJ Kuhn, where we chat about Kings of the Wild, and we'll have plenty more King's Dark Tidings content coming up, including our full deep dive into dragons and demons, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with us, and until next time, think on the words of Reddit user Hot Weakness 9069, where he or she says, "Is it just me, or do Rezkin and Wesson have a lot of romantic tension?" Maybe we'll find out in book 6. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
That's great.